I have a code, so-called, in Fast and Furious, how Dominic Toretto has a code like family. I have something like to help those who can't help themselves. So it's kind of one I had actually stole it from MTV series. So please don't
That's
mind that.
okay. People steal stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so I welcome you all to the third season of the Teen Whisperers show, and this is the first episode ever. And today we have a guest from Amsterdam, Netherlands. She is the host of the podcast, which got 5.0 rating in iTunes, and it is called Raw and Real. I have given a link in the description. If you guys want to check that out, go to my description, click the link. So with the drum roll, I introduce you Agnes, the podcaster and the content creator. Agnes, welcome to the show. I know I have been talking a lot right now, so please tell a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be a guest on your show. So I'm a podcaster and content creator, which means that, like you mentioned, I have my own podcast, Raw and Real, where I focus on entrepreneurship to show more the vulnerable side of today's leaders. And I also book people on podcasts, which means that I help people with branding. And I also create podcasts for other companies.
Wow, that's totally great. And today's question is kind of like podcasters who are small and versus podcasters who are big. So the question is, how small podcasters get big shot podcasters into their interviews?
Well, I think it's all about how you sell yourself. So especially if you're starting out, I wouldn't be discouraged to reach out to people that are like millionaires and you have the feeling, oh my God, how will I ever talk to this person? They achieved so much and I just feel so small. I think it's important that you first start out with people who you're comfortable with, who give you a good feeling and who you can practice with a little bit, because especially if you're starting out as a podcaster, you first need to know your style and you need to get a little bit more confident in what you're doing. And then if you recorded your first, let's say 5 episodes, and then you got some feedback, especially of what you can change and how you can become better. I think one of the best strategies is just if you had a guest on at the end, just ask them if there's someone they can connect you to. So they maybe have someone in their network who is a more known person, and that already is a little bit like a step up, like a ladder. And besides that, so if you're approaching someone who is more known, so first of all, don't be discouraged because they're all humans. And I think you would be just surprised, how easy it can also be just getting someone who is a little bit more known in the world. It's all about how you approach it. So just make sure to show them the benefit. Just make sure to give them some clips or some kind of easy, fast things, how they can check out what you're doing. And if you have a good branding to the outside, let's say you have a nice website and you have nice designs of how it looks like, and you can really show them that you're promoting the episode a lot, that you're doing 5 posts about this episode on various sites on social media. And again, and you tell them a little bit a nice story, then it just works. But the thing is, it's not going to work maybe the first time and maybe not the second time. So it's just important to keep going, because not everyone is just going to be enthusiastic, because you have to imagine those are also busy people. So just don't be discouraged and keep going, and just also ask for feedback about the message that you're writing, because especially if you reach out to 10 people and no one is responding, then maybe your pitch is wrong. Maybe you're just approaching it from the wrong angle. So it's really good to get feedback to change your approach, and then you'll see better results.
Okay, so let's say for example that a big shot podcaster got booked. Okay, so you are saying that I have done this in a various website, I will do many posts and all that. So with a lot of expectation, the big shot podcaster is actually giving something. So in case if the small podcaster who does all things couldn't actually succeed in getting a lead for him, the big shot podcaster who actually kind of invested his time and money and all that, how can he tackle that? I mean, if the big shot was calling and saying, you told me that 15 minutes of my time would be worth this, but I earn nothing. Let's say, for example, hypothetically, there's a guy like this. Because obviously not every human being is like so cool and calm, because obviously some people will have their money minded and all this stuff. So how will you tackle that if you are a small pastor?
So first of all, two things. So the first thing is, if you're going to have someone on your podcast who is a little bit more established, their time is usually planned throughout the day, which means that they won't have the time to check your podcast out. So probably they won't really even be aware when you're publishing it. And they definitely won't follow up with the result. I can promise you that. And the second part about it is, well, a podcast is something that takes time. So for me personally, also if I check now, the first episodes that I published back in November still get traction. So it's not necessarily that you publish an episode and the second day you'll get a message from someone. Well, like sometimes it takes 2 weeks, sometimes it takes a month to get there. So it's just really important to keep the context here. Also, if you just check the videos of the big podcasters. So for example, I really like Jay Shetty. So just make sure to check out a podcast he publishes on the next day, how many views it has. And then take another podcast, which he published half a year ago, and then check how many views that one has. So the traction comes over time. And just keep that in mind.
So it always depends, like you never know when the lead is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because I have experience, because I published a blog post like a year back, and when I look at the blog post, it got around like 10,000 views and somewhat around reads. But after that, I published like 8 blog posts, but still they couldn't like get more than 10 views rather than happening that blog post and all. Okay, so that's actually kind of like a podcaster, the person who's actually asking for the guest view. But let's say, for example, so my question is, should the big shot podcasters or the medium scale podcasters accept the podcast interview? Now, like you said, he actually kind of like need the benefits and all. So what the big shot podcaster should actually look at, like what's my benefit, and what are things that he should look at?
Can you repeat the question? So what are things that the big shot podcasters should look at
when they are coming to interview at the small scale podcasters? Like, should they look at their, how much local audience should I get? So you are right. Like, if they are really big, they obviously don't care about what's the thing is going to happen. But if they are like someone that's really interested in how much, thing that I got from that, my time is well spent. So what should they look after that? What are the metrics there?
Well, so first of all, what I think is very interesting to look at, just for example, check out on Instagram people that have 1 million followers and the interaction on their posts, and then check out someone who has maybe 10,000 and their interaction on their posts. So the point about it is that someone who has the biggest following doesn't necessarily have the biggest interaction on their posts. So personally, what I experienced when I was on podcasts that were really small and had a smaller following, that audience was more loyal, and I actually got more messages out of it than a bigger one. Again, because like the connection was stronger, so I wouldn't necessarily just like take a look at the following to determine that. Plus, I think it's just important to have the mindset to provide value and be like, okay, hey, I started out once as well. I also recorded my episode number 1. So why shouldn't I believe in this person and that this person will make the podcast big? And especially, again, creating a podcast is something that is out there for a long time. So it's just important to have that mindset that it will get traction over time and it will grow. If I see something in the podcaster that is starting out and I believe in this person, then I would definitely say, hey, yes, let's do it.
Great. Yeah. So in like summarizing the whole thing is like you will never know when the traction is going to come. And I think is that no matter what, even that, I always thought like there are like 7.7 billion people in the world, so that at least 1 million podcasts are out there. Someone will accept it. So that's one of the small tips that I can get. That's really great. So two personal questions. So first is that what was your expectation when you are like, commented on my post that okay, this guy, okay, you may have checked out my podcast link or even not, but what was the expectation like, when you're coming on to my podcast? What was the expectation?
Honestly, for me personally, I really like connecting with people and I really like networking with people. And I was just curious what it was about, and just like your writing really appealed to me. So I think it's just important to be open and again, to take it also as a learning experience. I mean, there are many things that I can learn from you as well.
Yeah.
And to have that mindset with like, oh, no matter who you're gonna meet, it's just like be nice to this person. It's a human and you can learn from them as well. So how great would it be if everyone would be just like open around us and trying to help out other people and just like, connecting.
Yeah, I think world would be really happy if there's something like that happens. Let's see if in the future cases if something like happens. And one final tip, our question is that what do you think is the best tip that you can give as a podcaster to someone who's starting out? Like the best tip in the whole world that you can give. It's your version. You can go ahead.
The best tip?
Yeah, the best tip according to you, because of course that answer people, but what do you think you is?
I think the best tip is really to keep going and not be discouraged. So especially if you look, for example, at your podcasting statistics, and I know that a lot of podcasters took a hit with coronavirus because people are traveling less, and a lot of people listen to a podcast while they're on their way to work. So it's just really important to just not stop and keep going. Also, if you have the feeling, okay, your listeners are dropping, don't stop doing it. It's kind of a little bit like a stock price. It goes up and down. So it's not necessarily all the time a constant growth curve. And, of course, it's important to get feedback from your listeners and improve on that. But starting a podcast is really a long-term thing. And also, if you're talking to other people and they're bragging that they have like episode number 4 and they have 5,000 downloads, well, that's possible if you're like an actress or if you're a musician and you already build up your brand. But if you're just like starting out as a random person and you don't have an online presence at all and you never spoke publicly, so you're literally unknown, well, it's gonna take you years to build up something and to really get a lot of traction. And it's important to keep the context and to have in mind starting a podcast is a long-term thing. So when you put out episode number 5, probably it won't be the big breakthrough in most cases. And again, it just takes years and years. So I think it's important when you're starting out to have that mindset, okay, I'm gonna keep going, and I already know now that I'm gonna do this for sure for at least a year every week consistently.
Yeah. And have you actually ever thought of not going, like the creative block? Have you ever got that in your life?
For sure. Of course. There are like many lows, definitely, where I'm asking myself, oh, this all doesn't make sense. No, I don't get the traction that I thought I would. But again, just keep the context. And for me, what really helps is that I really, really love doing it. And I get personally also so much out of it. And that really keeps me going. So I would highly recommend that if you're starting a podcast, just choose a topic that you really like. If you're interested in gaming, just start something in the gaming industry and talk about that. If you have a passion for sales, then start in sales and just check out what it's there and try to find a distinguishing factor. Because if you're just gonna start a podcast around a topic that you're not super enthusiastic about, it's gonna be really hard, because again, it is just something that takes a lot of energy, time, and effort to make it work. And just have that in mind when you do that.
So basically everyone has a creative block, and it's just that. So guys, her best tip is that keep going no matter what. And so I actually 20 minutes is up. So, but thank you so much. And is there anything that you want to ask me?
What's your plan for the podcast?
Okay, so you was like, when you're thinking like for a second, oh my god, I've been caught. I mean, if she's going to ask you a tough question, I'm done for. Okay, so what's my point? What's my point? I think so. So can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So what's your goal for the podcast, or what's your vision for it?
Yeah, so one of the main things is that here I actually I have a code, so-called, like in Fast and Furious, how Dominic Toretto has a code, like family. I have something like to help those who can't help themselves. So it's kind of one I had actually stole it from MTV series. So please don't
That's
mind
okay.
that.
People steal stuff all the time. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that many people actually couldn't find some questions which emotional questions are something that Google can't answer, because technical stuff people obviously can answer. Because if you go and ask a person like what happens when you get rejected, even if you go on YouTube, like not many people are talking about it. So my aim is that to help people emotionally, not in technical stuff. Because if they are asking like what are the mic to use, there are like millions of videos for that.
Yeah.
Not the other stuff is not actually mentioned. So another most important thing is that I have this kind of like Gary Vaynerchuk, like he has this audio tag kind of stuff. So I kind of thought I'm actually going to put a promo at the, kind of how to say, an ad at the end, like me and an audio producer, we actually produce this audio tag for small brands, like the 2 second 3 seconds when the logo comes and all. So we actually kind of produce that. So I actually want to promote that also. So that's my one of my main two things. But the main thing is that just if at least one person think that, oh my god, this podcast helps, if that's at least one person thinks, then my goal is achieved, I think so.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. And it's super powerful for me as well if I listen to a podcast and if I hear someone talking and I'm like, oh my god, I feel the same, and oh my god, I've been through this as well, or oh my god, I'm struggling with this as well. And that's a really cool feeling to have, because again, it's just so authentic, and it's often just like so real how what the insight is you can get into someone.
Guys, thank you so much for connecting to this podcast. So in case if you want to find her, I have given every link in the description, like LinkedIn and Facebook and all that stuff. And where I found her in a group, I also will link that in the description. And make sure you subscribe to our podcast and also to her podcast, which got 5.0 rating. So make sure you check that out as well. And I'll see you guys in the next podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you, Agnes. I'll see you later.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. My pleasure. Bye.